Hi everyone! Today's video is about something truly life-changing. Something Neville Goddard said over and over, but most people never fully understand. You don't become the version of you who has everything by chasing, forcing, or wishing. You become that version by being that version. Internally, emotionally, vibrationally, before anything changes on the outside. In this video, we're going to explore what Neville called identity shifting, the transformation that happens when you stop living from the old self that struggled, feared, lacked, or felt unworthy, and you begin to occupy the state of the version of you who already has the love, the abundance, the confidence, and the life you've been imagining. Because your world is not responding to what you want. It's responding to who you are being. Before we dive in, if you're truly committed to transforming your life from the inside out, make sure you subscribe to this channel. Here we go deep. We speak the truth you've always felt but could never explain. And we bring Neville's teachings to a level you can use every day. And if you want to deepen your understanding, the first comment will have the links to 2 essential Neville books, Feeling is the Secret and The Power of Imagination. These are the foundations of everything we're exploring today. All right, let's begin shifting into the version of you who already has everything. 1. The you that exists beyond your current life. When most people look at their lives, they assume that the things they want but don't yet have are missing because something external is blocking them. They may think they need more effort, more discipline, more confidence, more opportunity, more luck, or just better timing. But Neville Goddard flips this entire model upside down. He shows us that reality is not responding to our desires, our wishes, or even the things we consciously intend. Instead, reality is continually responding to the identity we are unconsciously living from, the state we are occupying without even realizing it. This is one of Neville's most transformative teachings, and for many people, it's the moment everything finally clicks, because it explains why someone can want love intensely and yet keep experiencing rejection. It explains why someone can desire abundance but continually face struggle. It explains why people with huge dreams stay stuck in the same patterns for years, not because their dreams are impossible, but because the self they are being is out of alignment with the self who already lives that dream. Neville uses the word state to describe this deeper layer of identity. A state is far more than a temporary emotion or a passing mood. It is a psychological position, a standing point of consciousness, a sense of self. And every state has its own worldview, its own expectations, its own emotional atmosphere, its own reactions, and its own outcomes. A person living from the state of, I am unchosen, will interpret everything through that lens. A person living from the state of, I am abundant, interacts with life in a completely different way. And these states are not moral. One is not good or bad. They simply determine what is possible for you in that moment. Think of states like rooms inside a vast house. You can walk into the room called confidence and immediately feel, think, and respond differently than when you are standing in the room called fear. You can walk into the room called success, and the entire inner dialogue shifts. What you expect, how you speak to yourself, what you assume about the world, and even the opportunities you notice. Your external life moves to match the room you are standing in, because the outer world is nothing but the reflection of your inner position. And this brings us to the most powerful part of Neville's teaching. The version of you who already has everything you want already exists right now in consciousness. This is not metaphorical. In the dimension of states, there is already a version of you who feels chosen, loved, purposeful, abundant, confident, and successful. There is already a version of you living the relationship you desire, the career you dream about, the lifestyle you imagine, the level of peace and wholeness you long for. That version isn't something you need to work up to or become worthy of. It is a state, and you can shift into it internally right now. This means that manifestation is not about creating something new. It's about occupying the identity where the desire is already fulfilled. Neville calls this living in the end, because in that state, you are no longer longing for it. You are no longer trying to get it. You are simply being the one who has it. And when you inhabit that state consistently, your external world has no choice but to rearrange itself to reflect that new identity. The transformation does not begin outside of you. It does not begin when the circumstances change. It does not begin when someone chooses you, when money arrives, when opportunities unfold, or when results finally appear. The transformation begins the moment you shift the self from which you are living. Neville says, you can only receive what your state is prepared to receive. In other words, life can only give you what your identity allows. You can desire love, but if your state is, I am unlovable, the desire cannot land. You can desire success, but if your identity is, I always struggle, the opportunities will slip through your fingers. You can desire abundance, but if your state is, there is never enough, you will continue to experience exactly that. Your external reality is loyal, relentlessly loyal, to the identity you are inhabiting. This is why people often feel like they repeat the same emotional or relational patterns over and over again. It is not fate. It is not personality. It is state. And because most people live their lives in the same state day after day, they unknowingly recreate the same outcomes year after year. They are not trapped by circumstances. They are trapped by an identity they don't realize they are embodying. But once you understand that identity is fluid, that you can select a new state in consciousness, you begin to see life differently. You begin to understand that nothing is fixed, that the self is not a rigid structure, that the you that exists beyond your current life is real, accessible, and ready for you to step into. And this is where the power lies. Your reality is not mirroring what you want. Your reality is mirroring who you are being, not who you wish to be, not who you hope to become, not who you think about at night, but the identity you wake up in, move through the day in, and fall asleep in. This block sets the foundation for the entire video. The understanding that true change doesn't begin by chasing external results. True change begins at the level of identity. When you shift the state, the world shifts with you. 2. How identity creates reality, the hidden state you are living in. When Neville said, "Your state is the cause, the world is the effect," he was describing something most people never notice about themselves. They're not reacting to life, they're reacting to the state they've been living in for years, sometimes since childhood. And that state quietly dictates how they show up in every situation, every relationship, every opportunity. And here's the hardest truth most people only discover later in life. You don't manifest what you want. You manifest from who you are being. You can hope for financial abundance, but if the identity you occupy is, I always struggle, the opportunities that come your way will match that. You can deeply crave love, but if the internal state says, I'm unworthy, you will subconsciously choose people and behaviors that reinforce that belief. Identity isn't what you tell others you are. Identity is what you consistently feel you are. And most of this identity runs on autopilot. Money. When the identity is struggling, afraid, or not good enough. Let's start with money because this is a place where states show themselves very clearly. People think they have a money problem. They don't. What they actually have is a state problem. If someone has lived for years identifying as, I always fall behind, something always goes wrong, I'm not smart enough to make more, money scares me, their behavior will follow that state even when they consciously desire prosperity. I've met so many people who say, when I make more money, I'll finally feel secure. But Neville would say the exact opposite. You will make more money after you feel secure, because the identity of security produces different behaviors: confidence, clarity, initiative, openness to opportunities. The identity of struggle produces contraction, avoidance, fear-based decisions, and a tendency to sabotage progress. And here's something I've seen in my own life. The moment I stopped identifying with the version of me who was trying to figure out money and stepped into the version who was worthy of earning, everything shifted. Opportunities, partnerships, ideas, they all matched the new identity I was living from. Your financial level rises or falls to meet the identity you choose. Love, when the identity is unworthy, unchosen, or rejected. Identity shows up even more painfully in love. You can want a healthy relationship with all your heart, but if the state you're living in is, I'm always the one who's left, people lose interest in me, I'm not someone people choose, I'm too much or not enough, you will unconsciously behave in ways that confirm that state. You'll tolerate less than you deserve. You'll interpret neutral actions as rejection. You'll pick emotionally unavailable partners because they match the unavailable state you've been accustomed to. You'll sabotage healthy love because it doesn't match the identity you've been aligning with internally. Neville said that people do not attract what they desire. They attract what they are in their own imagination. If you imagine yourself as unwanted, your world shapes to reflect that. If you imagine yourself as chosen, people begin responding to you differently without you forcing anything. And I've seen this in myself too. When I was living from a wounded state, every tiny thing felt like a sign of rejection, a delayed message, a short reply, a change in someone's tone. But those were not signs of rejection. They were signs of my identity trying to maintain itself. When I stepped into the identity of someone who is loved, valued, and chosen, the way people reacted to me shifted, not because they changed first, but because I did. Self-image, when the identity is insecure, invisible, or not capable. Self-image is the most powerful identity because it colors every experience. People living from the identity of insecurity interpret the world through the lens of fear. People living from invisibility avoid taking up space, avoid expressing desires, avoid stepping into their gifts. People living from not capable never start, not because they lack ability, but because the identity they occupy tells them failure is inevitable. Identity acts like a filter. Two people can face the same situation. One sees opportunity, the other sees threat, simply because they're living from different states. Neville said that each state has its own logic, behavior, emotions, expectations, outcomes. Meaning, if you are in the state of insecurity, everything you see will validate insecurity. If you are in the state of capability, the world will reflect capability. This is why you can try affirmations, visualizations, or effort and still not see change. Because if your state contradicts your desire, the state wins. The hidden truth most people never consider. Here's the key. Most people didn't choose their identity. It was absorbed through childhood, through experiences, through patterns, through emotional wounds. So they grow up believing, I'm reacting to life. But in reality, they are reacting to their internal state that was installed long before adulthood. They're acting from identities that don't belong to the person they've become. The world is simply mirroring the state, the identity they keep returning to. This is why Neville insisted, your state is the cause, the world is the effect. If you want a new effect, you must occupy a new cause. Identity first, reality second. And in this video, from this point forward, we're going to explore how to identify the state you've been living in and how to step into the version of you who already has everything you desire. 3. Why you can't become the new you while feeling like the old you. There is a moment, usually quiet and uncomfortable, when a person finally realizes something. It's not the outside world holding them back, it's the identity they keep returning to on the inside. This is why Neville said, you cannot live in the end, the state of the wish fulfilled, while emotionally remaining the version of yourself who never had it. Because states don't mix. You are either living from the new version of yourself or from the old emotional identity that was shaped through pain, rejection, and past experiences. And this is the part of the journey most people never address. They try to change their lives with new habits, new goals, new strategies, but deep down, they continue to feel like the old version. And you cannot become the new you when you're still emotionally loyal to the version who was hurt. The identity formed through rejection, abandonment, and lack. Everyone has a moment, or many moments, where a wound formed an identity. A breakup that made you feel unchosen, a childhood moment that made you feel not enough, a financial struggle that made you believe life is always hard, a comparison that made you shrink, a criticism that made you doubt your worth. These experiences don't stay in the past. They become states you unconsciously return to over and over until the state feels like who you are. Neville explained that states are sticky, especially the painful ones, not because people want to stay there, but because the emotions are familiar, almost comfortable in a twisted way. A wounded state becomes home. And even when you consciously want something better, the old identity still whispers, be careful, don't get your hopes up. People always leave. You always lose. You're not that kind of person. So you desire the new life, but your emotions are still married to the old self. The person who wants love but still feels unchosen. This is one of the most universal examples. A person wants connection, partnership, intimacy, and sincerely desires a loving relationship. But inside, the old identity from past rejection still runs the show. You can want love, but if you feel unchosen, the body contracts. You interpret neutral behavior as rejection. You become hyper-aware of signs that someone might leave. You sabotage good connections because they don't match the state you're used to. You stay attached to unavailable people because they fit the familiar pattern of not being chosen. The desire is real, but the identity is stronger. Neville said, your outer world can only reflect the inner conversation you hold about yourself. If you see yourself as unchosen, love cannot remain because it contradicts the identity you occupy. And I've lived this myself. There were times where I deeply wanted love, but my emotional state was still tied to old hurt. And that state shaped my behavior, my expectations, and even who I was drawn to. It wasn't my desire that was the problem. It was my identity. The person who wants abundance but still feels unsafe receiving. This is another pattern that appears everywhere. Someone wants financial expansion, opportunities, prosperity, truly wants it, but they still feel like the version of themselves who had to survive, who had to hold back, who had to make themselves small, who learned that receiving isn't safe.
So even when abundance shows up, they hesitate, freeze, overthink, reject opportunities, undercharge, self-sabotage, feel guilty for wanting more, feel afraid of losing what they get. Again, it's not the desire that's missing. It's that the emotional identity hasn't shifted. Neville said that the state of poverty and the state of abundance are completely different worlds, different logics, different feelings, different expectations. You cannot receive abundance through the emotional identity that was shaped by fear. The person who wants confidence but still hears the old voice. This one is subtle but powerful. People want confidence. They want to speak clearly, stand tall, express themselves, feel capable. But then there's the old voice inside. You always mess things up. You're not like other people. You're not talented enough. You're not the type who succeeds. Why would anyone listen to you? This internal dialogue is not random. It is the voice of the old identity. It is the emotional echo of past criticism, past comparison, past failure. And here's the painful truth. You can practice confidence externally for months, but if your internal identity continues to see you as inadequate, confidence will not stick. Because the new version of you cannot grow on the soil of the old emotional identity. Why desire fails when identity doesn't change? Most people think their manifestations fail because they didn't visualize enough, they didn't affirm enough, they didn't try hard enough, they don't have discipline, they don't have luck. But Neville teaches something radically different. People fail because they return emotionally to the identity where they were hurt. They want love, but still feel unchosen. They want abundance, but still feel unsafe. They want confidence, but still feel inadequate. It's not the desire that's weak. It's the emotional identity that contradicts the desire. And when the identity contradicts the desire, the identity always wins. You cannot plant new seeds in soil that is still poisoned by the past. You cannot live in the end while feeling like the person who never had it. You cannot step into the new you while emotionally protecting the old you. Neville said, "To desire a state without living from it is to remain in the old state." This is the emotional core of everything we're discussing. Until the emotional identity shifts, until the internal state changes, until you stop returning to the version of yourself who was wounded, life has no choice but to keep repeating the old story. Not because you want it, but because you are still being it. 4. Shifting into the version of you who already has everything. Now that we've explored how identity shapes your entire reality, we've reached the part where everything becomes practical. This is the moment where the viewer stops understanding and starts transforming. Neville's teachings here are simple, but not easy, because they require something that feels almost uncomfortable at first: becoming the new you before the evidence appears. Neville never told us to wish, beg, struggle, or wait for signs. He said something profoundly different. You shift your identity first, and then the world rearranges. And that's what we're going to do here. Living in the end. Occupying the feeling of fulfillment right now. Living in the end is not daydreaming. It's not visualizing for 2 minutes and then returning to fear. It's adopting the emotional home of the version of you who already has what you want. If you want love, ask yourself, how does someone loved and chosen feel during an ordinary morning? How does this person interpret a message, a delay, a silence? How do they carry themselves during the day? How do they fall asleep at night? If you want abundance, what is the physical sensation of knowing you're supported? How does someone financially secure make decisions? How does their body soften when they think about the future? Living in the end is choosing to feel as if the desire is fulfilled, not as if it's far away. Neville said the secret is to feel the wish fulfilled, not imagined, not hoped for, but fulfilled. When I started practicing this, the biggest shift wasn't external. It was the internal permission to feel safe, loved, capable, before the world gave me permission. And that changed everything. Assumption. Becoming the new identity internally. Assumption isn't positive thinking. It's an identity shift. It's when you say internally, "This is who I am now," before anything outside confirms it. The version of you who has your desire behaves differently, thinks differently, interprets the world differently. I remember when I began seriously applying assumption in my own life. There was a quiet moment, almost anticlimactic, where I simply decided, I'm not trying to become this version. I am this version. Nothing changed instantly in the physical world, but inside me, everything did. The questions stopped being, will it work? Will it happen? They turned into, it already worked. I'm just catching up to it in physical form. That's the power of assumption. The physical world lags behind, but it always follows. Inner speech alignment. Changing your inner tone and dialogue. This part is where most people unconsciously sabotage themselves. Neville taught that your inner speech, the silent words you say to yourself, is what writes the script of your reality. Not your affirmations, not your vision board, not your goals. Your inner conversations. If you want a new identity, but your inner voice still whispers, you're not enough, people don't choose you, you always lose, you can't do this, things never work out for you.
When your inner speech shifts, your entire emotional state shifts. And once the emotional state changes, the physical world follows. If you want to experience being chosen, your inner voice must sound like someone who knows they're chosen. If you want abundance, your inner tone must reflect trust, openness, stability. You change your life the moment you stop arguing for the limitations of your old self. Imaginal rehearsal, practicing the new identity until it becomes natural. This is where imagination becomes a tool, not for fantasy, but for identity training. Neville recommended choosing a short, simple scene that implies your desire is already fulfilled. Why? Because the mind doesn't distinguish imagination from reality, and consciousness is the real cause. When you rehearse the new you, your nervous system adapts, your emotional body adapts, your habits and expectations adapt. Choose a small scene that represents your new identity. Someone saying, "I'm proud of you." You opening an email with good news. You feeling loved as you're held in someone's arms. You breathing easily, knowing money is no longer a fear. Repeat that scene until it feels familiar, until it feels like home. That's when the identity shift locks in. Embodiment. Acting like the new you before anything changes. This is where most people hesitate. They want confidence after results. They want love after the relationship appears. They want security after the money arrives. But Neville teaches the inversion. You embody first. Life responds second. Your new identity has a posture, a tone of voice, a way of walking, a pattern of interpreting situations, a level of emotional resilience. Ask yourself throughout the day, how would the fulfilled version of me react here? How would they speak? What would they assume? How would they hold themselves physically? And then, do that. Even if the old fears whisper, even if the external world looks unchanged, even if evidence hasn't shown up yet. Because once you embody the new identity,
the world has no choice but to follow. The most powerful truth Neville ever gave us. Neville condensed everything into one simple, unshakable sentence. Your new life begins the moment you assume the new you. Not the moment something big happens, not the moment someone chooses you, not the moment the money comes, not the moment you feel ready. Your new life begins when you decide internally that the old version of you is done and the new identity has taken over. That's the moment everything shifts. The emotional invitation. Right now, you have a choice. Continue living from the identity that life shaped in you, or step into the identity that you consciously choose. If you want to go deeper, I always recommend starting with Neville's clearest books on identity and imagination. Both will be linked for you. They won't simply inspire you, they'll activate the version of you that already exists, the one who already has everything. If this message spoke to you, if something inside you felt seen, understood, or awakened, then don't leave this video without taking the next step. Subscribe to the channel because we go deep here, deeper than motivation, deeper than techniques. We talk about the self that creates your entire life. If this video helped you, share your thoughts in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. And remember, in the first pinned comment, I left the links to Neville's books, Feeling is the Secret and The Power of Imagination, 2 books that can genuinely change the direction of your life.